Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review, and in all honesty, more of a rant on the 2013 science fiction action mockbuster that is Atlantic Rim by the lovely and competent folks at the Asylum, who are responsible for some of the shittiest films in recent memory, and are doing their best to replace the likes of companies of yore that were known for making bad movies like AIP and so on and so forth. Um, this was actually another request by Bobby. So thank you, Bobby, for requesting my thoughts on this film. If you have a particular film that you would like to see me share my thoughts on, or a topic you would like to hear me discuss, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description. Now, I gotta be honest. I didn't like this film. I thought it was boring. I thought it wasn't so bad it's good, like some critics have made it out to be. I thought it was more boring with a capital B than anything else. That being said, it is not one of the worst films I've ever seen because there's some competence here, which is a little surprising considering that it's the asylum we're talking about. Jared Cohn's direction, it's honestly not that bad. For a low budget film, I think he knows his way around a camera. He's not stumbling around too much, and he especially knows how to shoot sequences with the right amount of lighting and so on and so forth. And performance wise, I thought the film actually features some decent performances by some of the cast. Some of the performances were pretty awful, but I mean, Greene really was chewing the scenery as this hard ass Admiral Hadley, but because he was so into it and because he was just throwing caution to the wind for the entirety of the running time, I honestly did get a little bit of a kick out of his performance as Admiral Hadley. Graham Greene in this film did not give two fucks. He was just here for his paycheck, and it was honestly kind of refreshing to see someone who was like, "Yep, I don't give a fuck. I'm just gonna say these lines," and but at the same time, I'm actually going to put some effort into it. David Chokachi, he played essentially the lead in Red. Treach, he was in this as Jim. Jackie Moore played a character named Tracy. Those are really your three leads. There's a few other people, but for the most part, that those are your main cast members. And I thought the three main cast members were decent. I thought they had good chemistry with one another, even though David Chokachi is just a poor man's Michael Biehn. Like, he really is. Like, he's got the look. He's, he even has a similar height and build. Really, he's just a poor man's Michael Biehn. If you can't afford Michael Biehn, you get this guy. And the film costs like $500,000, but I don't buy that at all. I do not buy that this costs $500,000. This is one of those movies that, to me personally, probably cost 100,000, 200,000. If it cost $500,000, where did that money go? Because it definitely is not on the screen. And speaking of stuff on the screen, this does have some cheaper CGI effects in it, but I was actually kind of surprised at how legitimately kind of okay some of the CGI was at times in this movie, especially in comparison to Asylum's other films. Like, the CGI in this is not on the same level as the CGI in Pacific Rim, for instance, which is what this is a mockbuster of. But it also isn't on the same level as some of the other originals made for Sci-Fi Channel movies that the Asylum has produced, where you have CGI that looks like straight up ass and looks like it's something from 2 decades ago. That's not the case with the CGI. Like, there were some moments, there were some shots where you can kind of tell, but there's some other shots where it's like, it's typical sort of direct-to-video CGI. I've seen worse. Now, the plot of this film, this script by Richard Lima, Thunder Levin, and Hank Woon Jr. I don't know why this has 3 writers. You needed 3 people to come up with a screenplay for this movie, of all things. I apparently my cat doesn't like it either. Yeah, I know. This movie sucks. But so yeah, the screenplay. I can't believe that there are 3 people that were required to write this trash. Um, I don't know what. I know, it's bad. It's a bad movie. Come here. My cat's protesting too. Olympus is like, yeah, Atlantic Rim sucks. Dick. It's a rim job. Anyway. So yeah, the screenplay is a mess. It starts out with these people who are working at like an oil rig, and for some reason they have a couple hot chicks in a submersible who are supposed to be these pilots of some submersible that's, I guess, looking for something on the ocean floor. Whatever it is not really explained that well. And then a monster shows up and takes out the 2 chicks in the submersible, and then eats the oil rig. And then the military, for some reason, gets involved looking for the oil rig. It becomes a rescue mission with robots, with people and robots going underwater trying to rescue an oil rig. And I'm like, how are you gonna rescue an oil rig? Yeah. So that just is like, what? And so there's a monster that shows up, and then the monster winds up going on land, and then the creature gets defeated by one of the robots, which are piloted by the 3 main cast members, alongside the help of the military. But of course, there's also more monsters, so they have to end up fighting them as well to save the Earth from these underwater monsters, these sea beasts. And then they're trying to have some sabotage sort of stuff with some guy who is a part of the military operation, who even has an eye patch. Like, you might as well stamp bad guy on his forehead because it's that obvious. And you have this scientist lady who is responsible for this project with these robots, and moves forward with another phase, which involves the 3 leads putting on a Nerf. What it is, it's just a Nerf piece of headgear that was for a specific kind of Nerf gun, and they just put it on their head. It's supposed to be like, it's just supposed to be some fancy thing that'll connect their nervous system to the robots. So when they move, the robots will move with the same reflexes and the same movement as they do. And that was kind of an okay idea, alright concept. This is a movie about giant robots punching monsters, fighting monsters, and it honestly falls in the same trap that the film that it's trying to mockbust, Pacific Rim, where there's not enough monster fighting. There's not enough robots punching monsters. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really feature that. So you have a lot of moments that are just really dull and boring because they're just chock full of technobabble or military dialogue or subplots that aren't interesting. There's a whole sequence where Treach goes around and is looking for this missing girl, And for some reason, there's like dead people everywhere in New Orleans, and because this film actually has an opening credit sequence that takes place at Mardi Gras. And the way that it's shot and the way that everything is set up, I honestly feel this film was only made as an excuse for the filmmakers and the producers to go to Mardi Gras that year. That's where the budget went. Just going to Mardi Gras and probably blowing all the money on hookers and beads. That's what that's where the fucking money went. Hookers, beads, and and booze at Mardi Gras in 2013. But yeah, they're at Mardi Gras, and so the monster actually shows up in New Orleans, and then apparently things get messed up, and there's like a bar that's on fire. This same bar, by the way, you see late in a later shot in the film when they're supposed to be in New York. Good job, Asylum. And so yeah, Treach saves this girl in this just nothing subplot. They also try to create this bit of drama surrounding Treach actually being treacherous and making out with Red's girl, but then Red doesn't give a fuck, so it was just pointless. And Red, there's this whole thing where because he disobeyed an order to stop the monster the first time, he gets thrown in the brig. And court is going to be court-martialed, and there's this whole thing where there's another monster shows up, and so his friends wind up breaking him out of the brig, and then they get in the robot suits one last time and fight the monster. They get these melee weapons that don't do dick, they don't do shit. So the government goes ahead and decides to fire a nuclear missile. And this is when the monster is supposedly in New York. And speaking of the monster in New York, this film was so cheap and incompetent. There are multiple scenes that are just stock footage. Stock footage of Navy planes flying off an aircraft carrier that you can tell are not from this movie. And other moments like that. And one of the most egregious ones is there's a sequence that's supposed to show that on a bridge in New York City, there's a traffic jam because people are trying to evacuate. And they're having a hard time trying to evacuate because the monster is in New York City. And they cut to this bridge, and there are multiple cars on this bridge just driving like there's no problem whatsoever. It's like normal traffic on the bridge, and they just throw in sound effects of cars honking in a vain attempt to try to trick the audience, if they blink and miss it, to believe that it's actually showing a traffic jam. You couldn't find any stock footage of a traffic jam on a bridge? Like, really? So I mean, that was one that really stood out to me. I was like, come on now, movie. What the fuck? Um, so it pretty much ends the way you think it's gonna end. They find a way to beat the monster. Red takes a nuclear missile, and in an attempt of potential sacrifice, he basically flies the monster into space and then activates the nuke. And instead of actually doing something that would be somewhat unique in these kind of movies and ballsy and have him actually die, nope, he lives. Somehow he survives, and then everybody has a bit of a celebration at the end because they defeated the monster once and for all and saved New York City and saved the Earth. And end credits. This film is not incompetent enough consistently to be so bad it's good. It's not funny enough in terms of its script or its lines of dialogue to really be enjoyable in that particular category. It's not exciting or fun enough when it comes to its action or, monster fighting to be enjoyable in that particular area either. This is just a really boring, dull, forgettable movie. Um, I guess the Mystery Science Theater 3000 guys, the new Mystery Science Theater 3000 guys for the last season, they did a commentary for this. I don't know how they're gonna make this that entertaining because this is just such a boring movie. Most of it is, like I said, is just dialogue and sequences where they're not doing a whole lot. Even when you first see the robots when they go underwater, which robots underwater is kind of a cool idea and it's a little bit different. But I think Pacific Rim also had moments like that. And so they go underwater and it's just boring. They're just walking around and they almost fight a monster, but then they're ordered not to do it, and their suits get shut down, and so you're just like, wow, this is boring. And I mean, I watched it on Tubi, and it was supported with ads. So, like, every 10, 15, 20 minutes, there would be an ad break. And this film was so dull and ineffective in terms of entertainment that I couldn't really tell the difference between Atlantic Rim and an advertisement when it comes to the entertainment factor. I mean, some of these ads were actually more entertaining than this movie was. Uh, when it comes to any of the other technical standpoints, from cinematography or editing or the music, it's all pretty bad. The music by Chris Ridenour. Oh god, I hated this score. This score was just repetitive, so annoying. Same beats over and over again. It's like the score is the equivalent of you pounding your head on a brick wall, hoping that you're finally going to break through, but you never do because this brick wall seems to be impenetrable. And so it's just the same fucking repetitive motion over and over and over and over and over again. Just so repetitive and irritating, this score. It even plays in certain sequences where you don't need a score, or the kind of score that has the tone that this score has. So you have a score that sounds like really epic, and it's just fucking shots of people talking in a war room or some shit. We don't need that kind of music for that kind of sequence. Cinematography, nothing impressive, nothing that particularly interesting. Editing, I guess it's alright. The editing wasn't like the worst thing ever, but at best it's just serviceable. It's nothing particularly that impressive either. And yeah, it's just one of those movies where I guess it only existed to trick some grandparents into thinking that they're gonna buy at Pacific Rim for their kids, which is what Asylum is built on, is these mockbusters, these movies that are just total fakes, total hoaxes, with deliberately misleading titles and plot lines in order to trick people into thinking that it's actually a blockbuster movie. Um, but once you watch it, you know that that's not the case at all. And if the goal was to make me appreciate Pacific Rim more, this film definitely succeeded in that regard. Because I'm not even a big fan of Pacific Rim, but I'd rather watch that 2 times in a row than watch this boring bullshit ever again. Or like Graham Greene's character says, bull butter. But anyway, yeah, I got nothing else to say about this movie, except I definitely would not recommend this one unless you're a glutton for punishment and you feel like you got to see every mockbuster known to man, or you're actually a fan of Asylum mockbusters. But if you're not any of those things, just skip this movie. There is no point whatsoever in sitting down and watching this film if it doesn't interest you. Trust me, it's not gonna make it worth it. It's not gonna make it worth your while. You're gonna be bored out of your goddamn mind, and you'd rather be playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots. In fact, an average bout of Rock'em Sock'em Robots would be more enjoyable, and would 100% be more entertaining than watching Atlantic Rim. Atlantic Rim is a rim job, but the worst kind of rim job. It's a rim job by Jaws, who bites your dick off and then spits it back in your face. Anyway, thank you for watching my rant on Atlantic Rim, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.